Hello, and welcome to this museum of mythology of land, water, and wind. So basically, what this project was to be a. It was originally a just a 3D renders and models in Maya of this futuristic museum about Greek mythology. And what this project turned into was my teacher would, or my professor handed me all these models in order for me to put these in Unity and make a pseudo interactive, like a virtual museum out of it that you could actually walk around and view all the models in real time. And it worked out all right. It was I'd say my second foray, or my second big project using Unity. Um, there were a couple things that really were problems while making this, but I'll get through those as I walk through. So each so before this project came about, my professor had previous classes where each student got assigned a diorama, and they would choose a Greek god to model and make a little scene out of the diorama that they were assigned. Now, this one in particular was actually my professor's. Let's see, he has, I believe that's Nessus, and that's Hercules fighting the Hydra in the background there. Now, to be honest, my professor's models were the most difficult to work with because he really, really likes high poly stuff. What would normally be high poly in a video game, he would consider that low poly himself. So I had to keep on asking him to just keep on, decimating or somehow lowering his polygon count. And we eventually got something that worked. Now, his models are still quite high in the poly count, but it's still, we got it to work. And there was another issue with Hercules' his arrows. They were like, he actually modeled out each feather, strand of the feather and everything, and then all the arrows were duplicated inside themselves. So for the longest time, I was just like, why is this? Whenever I look towards Hercules, is the frame rate going to 10 or 20 or around that range? So I eventually just modeled a new arrow for him, and everything turned out all right. Another thing too was this is my first time working with the cloth, the interactive cloth in Unity. So I thought it'd be so my professor had these really huge signs that were just sort of somehow magically hung up in this museum. So I thought it'd be a nice little touch to have them lightly flowing randomly, just to give that subtle hint of some air circulating throughout. And the museum is actually open. If you see through the ceiling, you can see some of the stars. And I'm not sure which angle you'll have to look at it, but you can actually see the moon too if you find the right spot to look at it. So we'll continue on here. Oh, and the model of the structure of the museum, the reflective part as well as the rocky part, was made by my professor as well. Now this is one of the students' works. Let's see, this is Thessa. I'm not exactly sure who Thessa was. Apparently some mermaid, I guess. But again, these students were beginners as far as modeling goes, so their models were very, very simple, which made them easy to render, of course, in real time. Um, the textures as well were a little low, but it still gets the point across. You can still tell that, you know, this is a mermaid. So let's see what else. Another issue I had was these railings here were in his renders in Maya. These railings actually glow. Now, of course, I was using the free version of Unity, and it's they do have a glowing feature in the pro version, so I was a little bit limited there. So I just had these as a self-illuminating, which was the closest I could get. This is Nike, and one problem we had with her model was the mountains, the actual model of the mountains, not the texture in the background. The model, or the texture, would show up in Maya, but not in Unity, because in Maya, the woman who made this, she was using some sort of procedurally generated texture. So I basically took a render of from the top down and applied that texture to her model. So we got her mountains to actually show up in Unity. Now, the model of Nike herself is, again, pretty basic. And the wings, I believe they were procedurally generated in Maya as well. And we just didn't have enough time to fix the model ourselves, so we had to continue on with the rest of everything else. It was also interesting trying to get the particles to set up, because in Maya as well, she had like a voxel cloud system going. So I tried and to emulate that using Unity's particle emitter system. And one thing too, lighting was another problem that came about later on. I'll talk about that in just a second here. So this is Ares. This is actually mine. So as I was putting all the stuff into Unity, I was also making, or actually I was replacing someone else's diorama. And I felt a little bad about that, even though my professor, not to put the blame on him, but he was the one that put me up to the task. So, and I felt a little bad for the guy I was replacing. So his sword, that's behind that pillar there, is from the original diorama. I wanted to leave something there, not to completely replace him. But this was my first time modeling humans, or at least the human form. So I started with a base mesh in Maya and did a lot of the sculpting in ZBrush. It was my first time using, or seriously using ZBrush, as far as like trying to model something. Unfortunately, for some reason, the normals on the shield and helmet aren't showing up. But they look similar, like the normals would show all the scratches and dings and everything on the shield, things like that. And also his robe, or his dress sash thing that he's wearing, originally was a cloth, and it would flow to the wind as well, but it was really taking up a lot of energy, or a lot of, we just lost a lot of frames whenever we tried to render this guy, so I had to turn that off for the time being. Okay, so as far as the lighting goes, as you can tell, there were a lot of lights. And it looks cool how like they're just sort of, I don't know, how they're like surrounded by this this blackness kind of thing. But anyway, setting up the lights in Unity was kind of, originally it was a hassle, because I was trying to figure out why I couldn't put more than 2 lights in a scene without the other lights sort of turning off, so to speak. So then I eventually figured out about like how many I forget what specifically it was. Um, but basically, I used to have one light per, light that you can see. But then I really had to tone it down. So now there's like 3 per every row of lights. So like this double row of green lights here will probably just be like 1 or 3 green lights next to each other, and things like that, because it really looked strange with the how I can't remember specifically what it was. It was the way it rendered a bunch of lights when they were in close proximity to each other that were more than what the quality settings were set at. But basically, you could bump up the quality settings and allow more lights to be rendered. So it worked out alright. In the end, at least. Now, these white panels in the very backs, or the very edges of the museum, they were originally pure, just reflective, like mirrors. And of course, it's very hard to do any reflective kind of things in a game engine, especially for a beginner. So we just put them as a means to go to, when you look at the sign here, go to the credits. So when you get close enough to these, the credits should pop up. Yep, there we go. So, in conclusion, I guess, this was a really fun project. I'm not sure what else to say. It was okay. Yeah. So their special topics summer. Those 3 guys there. Those were the original students. But yeah, it was a lot of fun using Unity, trying to figure out all these problems. There was a little bit of coding, figuring out, like, for example, the colliders. So when you get close enough to those white panels, it would jump to the credits themselves, as well as like things like the scrolling texture. But that was pretty much it. It was not a lot of programming at all, really, but it was still a lot of fun making this kind of stuff. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.